Hello everyone and welcome back to another discussion and review. Today we'll be flying into another world. This book is Nice Dragons Finish Last, the first book in the Heartstriker series, written by Rachel Aaron. At the time of this recording, there are currently 2 books in the series released. By the time this video goes up, there should be 3 books released. A little more about the author. She writes under 2 names, Rachel Aaron of course, as well as Rachel Beck. As far as I can tell, the first name she writes under is urban fantasy and fantasy books, and the latter name is more sci-fi books and that kind of thing, as far as I can tell so far. I could be wrong in this. Now some audiobook information. This book was narrated by Vikas Adam, who does a fantastic job. I was pulled into his performance very quickly. I admit at first the way he read surprised me, however I quickly found myself enjoying it. Not only does he give each character a voice of their own, however he puts a lot of emotion into it as well, without going over the top. Thus I believe, of all the audiobooks I've done a discussion and review so far, I believe very few, his performance is my favorite. And out of all the audiobooks I've ever listened to, he's top rated, probably in my top 3 or 4 narrators thus far. Anyways, the audiobook comes in at 13 hours and 2 minutes long, with the paperback coming in at 286 pages long. With all that said and out the way, I think we'll move on to the story section now, shall we? The book opens up with a bit of a prologue, which I will not go over. Once it finishes, however, we finally meet our main character Julius, just waking up in his older sister, by only a few minutes, house. He has been kicked out of his house by his mother and sent to Detroit, also known as the Detroit Free Zone now. Why was he kicked out of his mother's house, the clan's stronghold, where the rest of the family is free to come and go as they please? Well, he was sent away because he doesn't meet his mother's approval. In fact, he doesn't meet most of his family's approval of how a real dragon should act. He has no big goals, he has no schemes, he's not manipulative, or any of the other things that a proper dragon should be. Yes, that's right, he's a dragon. However, his dragon form has been sealed by his mother, meaning that he only has his natural gifts and strengths and some of his magic. He cannot take his true form at the time. The book follows Julius as he gets a job from his elder brother in order to prove that he is useful in some way so his mother will not eat him, and hopefully she'll unseal him. The job he is given is to find another dragon's clan's runaway sister and bring her back. Of course, things aren't quite that simple. Who is this dragon he has to track down? Her name is Katya, the youngest dragon of the 3 sisters. Even though she is the youngest dragon of her clan, she is still older and thus stronger than Julius. Not only that, but she doesn't want to be found, and she's doing a really decent job at covering her tracks. When he finds her, he has been told to either convince her to come home, or force her home with the help of a magical bracelet. Along the way he meets Marcy, a human mage who joins him searching since he needs her skill set. He also has the, pleasure, dubious pleasure of course, of his brother Justin joining them. He also meets a number of other people, mostly family, however there are some other characters along the way. There is so much more to this story I could go over, however if you want to find out the rest yourself, I encourage you to do so, because I'm not going to spoil anything else here. With all that done and out the way, we're going to move on to the world section now. In 2033, a meteor hits the Earth. With it, a reaction. Magic has reawakened. After thousands of years or more, magic has begun to flow again. Not only do humans begin to learn the gifts of magic once again, however, more creatures reawaken with the magic. Spirits who were once long asleep and other beings have begun to awake again. The story is set in Detroit, as I mentioned before, where there are very few laws. In fact, it is run by the Lady of the Lakes, the only city in the entire world run by a spirit. Also, since she has very few restrictions on magic or magical research, it is the most magical city in the sense that they do the most research there and are constantly trying to advance magical research and discovery. As I mentioned before, she has very few laws that she really cares about. Killing is one of them, of course, but the biggest law, as far as I can tell, is no dragons are allowed within her city. This makes the book very interesting. While it is an urban fantasy book, it has elements of cyberpunk mixed into it. Some people have cybernetic enhancements in their bodies in various ways. There are phones that link to your magical aura that allow them to create visual overlays. Finally, their cars are fully automated. This is something I hope we get to discover a little bit more, as I really think the Magitech, which is what they call it, is very, very cool, and I hope we kind of get to discover a little bit more and see it advance a little bit more as we go through the story, as well as the magic, of course. Of course, being urban fantasy, there is magic. The magic in this is interesting, as there seems to be multiple types of magic. I'll talk about the ones we learn of early on. There is thaumaturgy, which works very similar to programming. You write out a code or ritual, and etc., and an effect happens, and it always happens how you write it out, so it's important to write it the right way. This can be pre-written, it seems, via tattoos or inscribing it onto an armband or etc. And generally, thaumaturgists are practical about magic. They study for years, and the magic can be drawn in, or it can be drawn in from just from the environment around them, or it can be drawn in from items of power. Not magical weapons, mind you, at least as far as I know, but things like a unicorn's horn or some other magical beast's claw or talon or etc. The other one we learn of are shaman magic. They are better at casting on the fly. They generally prefer not to deal with all the training that the thaumaturgists do, and they generally kind of wing it. Their magic is drawn in from them, sometimes from spirits, other times just from the air around them, and they generally make pacts with spirits. They generally have like a totem animal. So, of course, it's clear that thaumaturgists are better at planning things out. If they have time to set up for it, they can do incredible things. But if you want something reactionary, shamans seem to be a little bit better in that aspect. There is one other aspect about magic that you might be wondering about, and that I may have kind of clued in at above, and that is dragon magic. Dragon magic is unlike human magic. It differs in that they don't draw it in from the world around them or from spirits or anything along those lines. It's within them. They are magic. We learn quickly that Julius's brood, in fact, brood J, are fairly magically gifted in the family. Though Julius has not practiced much of this because, well, the family can be competitive and it can be deadly at times. Their magic, as I said, is different in that they draw it from themselves, and so the bigger they get, the older they become, the more powerful, the more magic they have, the more things they can do with it. They also see magic a bit differently than humans do, so that's an interesting aspect of it. Our first character we're going to talk about is Julius Heartstriker. Like most of his family, he has black hair and bright green eyes. He is sealed, however, which is something I mentioned in the story section. He is a fairly relaxed guy and a very nice person in general, which is very strange for a dragon, as most of them are not. Most of them are manipulative or scheming in some way, and he's just not that. He is the smallest and weakest of his family, however he makes up for this in being very fast, something that he's a bit out of practice of due to lack of combat training in his recent years. He also seems to have a fairly deep well of magic like with most of the J-Clutch. However, he doesn't really have much practice in this aspect. He doesn't understand why being nice is wrong, and through the story he tries to please his family by being a proper dragon and fails each time in worse and more frustrating ways. The next character we'll talk about is Marcy. She's the main female protagonist. She's a human and she dresses in a sort of old school magician's outfit. She loves thaumaturgy and is bound to a death spirit cat named Ghost. She's highly talented with magic and is a huge geek about it, able to talk about various aspects of magic in great detail. When we first meet her though, she's a bit down on her luck. She lives in a rundown house. She's trying to scrape enough money by just to get food. And we find out that, she has a lot of issues of her own. In fact, a lot more than even Julius in some senses. I find her interesting because she has a pretty good business sense about her. And she does try to take some advantage of people without being mean about it. But always seems to have some bad luck happen to her. It's very interesting and fun to listen to. The next character we'll talk about is Justin Heartstriker, another from J Clutch, obviously. He is born large and he stands about 6'6" in his human form. In his dragon form, he's also considered large for at least his age in Clutch. He generally is the opposite of Julius, large and powerful, etc. He also carries one of the 5 fangs of the Heartstriker, something that's only given to the deadliest in the clan. He also happens to be one of the very few brothers that Julius actually likes, or at least gets along with. He also is a bit brutish in personality, and generally likes to get things done via fighting. He also has a tendency to be very risky, which happens to be why his mother likes him so much. The next character we're going to talk about is somebody who steals the spotlight every time he's in it, or at least most of the time. Brohimir Heartstriker, or Bob as he prefers to be called. He's the seer of the Heartstrikers. He's very mysterious and honestly just awesome in how he acts. He's very silly and sometimes a bit childish. However, it never seems annoying or anything like that, and while he's always scheming, it always comes off as just fun to listen to. Honestly, I enjoyed every scene that he was in, even some of the ones where I didn't necessarily like what he was doing. Given that we talked about a number of Heartstrikers, it'd probably be a good idea to talk about the head of the Heartstrikers, Bethesda Heartstriker, the mother of the clan, the original Heartstriker, getting the name by killing her father. She is known outside of the clan as Bethesda the Broodmare due to the fact that she's had 10 clutches when most dragons have 1 or 2 clutches at the most and wait hundreds of years between them. Her last clutch was the J clutch, obviously, Julius being the youngest. She's a cruel woman who does not really seem to care for her children, or in fact about anybody except for her own goals. Next we'll talk about Kadia. She is the daughter of the 3 sisters, who are some of the most powerful dragons, if not the most powerful dragons on the planet. They are a clan known for being rather magically gifted. Kadia is the youngest of the clan, much like Julius, though, unlike Julius, she's around 1,000 years old. She has been kept locked up most of her life by her elder sisters due to the fact that she's kind of a failure in their eyes as she lacks the magical potential. While she is kind, or at least kinder than most dragons, unlike Julius, she has the draconic drive to win goals, to try to achieve something. And with all that said and out the way, I think we're going to move away from the character section and go to wrap up. There are more characters both interesting and important to the story. However, I don't want to spoil too much more, so we'll wrap it up here. I very much enjoyed this book. In fact, I'm a little bit late to giving this discussion and review because I decided I was going to listen to the other books currently released in this series, which I've also enjoyed. Who do I think would enjoy this book? Well, if you enjoy urban fantasy settings with a smart, clever, and honestly very lucky main protagonist, this book is probably good for you. Julius is a dragon, so he is faster and stronger than humans. However, he is the weakest dragon and is often up against things that are even more powerful than he is and some of his family. And also there's times where just his strength and speed isn't going to work for him, so it makes it really enjoyable to listen to. Another thing is, if you're looking for a series with a lot of characters with fun personalities and emotions, this book is probably for you. I felt all the characters were really well made and enjoyable to listen to. Both the villains, the side characters, the main characters, all had feelings and personalities and goals. Even if you don't know what they all are at the time, you have a feeling of what they're trying to do, and you can experience that and just enjoy it. I think it's a real strength of this series. This book also blends drama, action, and romance pretty well together. I admit it's a bit more on the light-hearted side, which I found was good in this book. I didn't want something too dramatic for this book, so I found this was a really nice touch. It has the feelings to it. You believe the characters are feeling this, but it doesn't go too far overboard, or it doesn't downplay it too much, so I really enjoyed that. If you're hoping for a book with a little bit more dark tones to it, this book is likely not going to be for you. As you probably guessed by now, it really isn't that sort of book. While there is fighting, injury, and some death, it never feels dark, never feels hopeless, so I would say this is probably not going to be something you'd enjoy. If you're hoping for an urban fantasy series with a lot of PI work or cop stuff in it, this book is probably not for you. It's not really that sort of urban fantasy. The main character doesn't really have any kind of PI skills. Another thing is that unlike a lot of other urban fantasy series, the romance is a little bit on the slower side, and there's also no sex in this. There's a few jokes, teasing, etc., but there's nothing explicitly done. Which is not a problem for me, however I know there are some people who enjoy that, so there you go. And with that, I think we've covered everything I wanted to talk about. I hope you enjoyed this discussion and review. I really enjoyed this book, and I hope you all do as well. If you liked the discussion and review, please give me a like, and if you'd like to leave any comments below about the book or questions you may have for me or anything else, please feel free to leave it in the comment section.